Hello everybody, we are back here on the Hunter Call of the Wild, and today we are going to talk about one of my most wanted and long-awaited features that I would like to see the Hunter Call of the Wild eventually get, and that is the non-typical system. Now we're going to be hunting some reindeer as we talk about it, but this video will primarily be focused on the fact that I'd really like to see non-typicals in the game, and a little bit of talk about how I think that they could do it. Now, there's definitely a lot of different ways that it could be implemented, and it's almost impossible to know exactly how they would bring them into the game. However, I do feel like we would get a system very similar to the Hunter Classic, and if you guys are not familiar with what non-typicals look like in the Hunter Classic, I will most likely leave a couple links to some of the non-typicals that I've killed in that game, as they are pretty cool, though not the most realistic in the world, and I do think Call of the Wild could probably do better. Now, I think one of the biggest questions myself and a lot of other people would have about non-typicals eventually being in the game is, what type of rarity would they be? Would it be something that you would see as common as a diamond, or would it be more along the lines of finding a great one, or somewhere in between? In my personal opinion, I do feel like it should sit somewhere in the middle. And I do think a good equivalent would maybe be like for a whitetail, instead of a level 10 fabled or like a level 3 diamond, it's like a level 5 or a level 6 non-typical. And it's hard to say if they even would take that route with giving it an entire new level, or maybe it would just be a random chance that one of your regular level 2 or 3 or level 1 whitetail, it could end up being a non-typical. That would actually be really cool if there was such thing as diamond non-typicals and gold non-typicals. I do think that would be kind of a cool system, and it would give us a lot more to look forward to whenever we set out for a grind, and I'm hoping that they do it that way, to be honest. The more we're talking about it right now, the more I do think that would be cool. Just have them be the exact same levels as the normal deer, but then give them the chance of being a non-typical. Not gonna lie, it would probably be one of the coolest feelings in the world to see a level 3 and have it have a non-typical rack. And then to take that thing down and it being a diamond non-typical would honestly be pretty cool. So, I do think that's actually the way that I would like to see them do it. Now, one of the main things that really makes the non-typicals exciting to go for and unique is true racks, and I'm really hoping that they will implement some type of system that really does truly randomize every single tine on each antler, because we see that currently with true racks in the Hunter Call of the Wild, it's a randomized system, but it's not as random as a lot of people would like. Now, there is plenty of preset frames for each rack, or not for each rack, but for each species, and they kind of just have different variables on those set frames between different tine angles and different tip-to-tip spread and main beam length and stuff like that. It does give you a bit of randomization, but nowhere near the type of randomized system that we saw in the Hunter Classic, where the different tines could be different lengths and all that type of cool stuff. I do think eventually they will need to update the system a little bit to include the tine length for non-typicals to work to their fullest, and maybe have each different tine just randomly generated on the racks as a whole. I think that could really add a lot of replayability with non-typicals whenever they do end up adding them. Another thing that I was thinking about with non-typicals is, would they end up being very similar to the non-typicals on the Great One Whitetail, where they're a little bit on the larger side of what is realistic and more towards the farm deer side of things? Or would they be smaller non-typicals, a little bit more like what you would see in real life when you're just hunting out on public land and just happen to get lucky enough to find a monster like that? I'm curious if they would make them get just as insane as the great ones. I feel like they would have to make it so they don't get quite that crazy. Otherwise, what point would there be to even go for a Great One Whitetail anymore? So I do feel like they would have to make them smaller than that and probably score in like the mid 200s, maybe high 200s at the most. Maybe low 300s, but they couldn't really go any higher than that, or you'd be treading into the territory of the Great One Whitetail, which would definitely not be good for the Great One Whitetail, as less people would probably be interested in grinding for it if a non-typical ended up looking just as good and took less time to get. So I feel like they would have to try and find some kind of middle ground there. Another thing that I thought about with non-typicals is this would unlock an entire new realm when it comes to like super rares and things like that. It would bring an entire new category into the game with it being the non-typicals, and then you'd have the opportunity to get something like a diamond non-typical rare, and well, at that point, what would we even call it? It would be harder to find than a super rare and would most likely be much more insane when somebody does find one. So what would it even be called, and how difficult would it be to even find one? Because I can just imagine that finding a rare fur type on a non-typical would already be almost impossible, let alone getting a diamond non-typical with a rare fur type. Something else I would really like to see when they do finally decide to add non-typicals to the game is a possibility for it to only have one non-typical antler, because that can happen in real life. You will see some situations where only one of the antlers has non-typical tines and the other antler is a little bit more normal looking. And I think that would be a cool addition, and along with non-typicals, maybe they could add just regular drop tines and stickers to the game, so maybe you could have a typical buck, but it has one drop tine. And I think that would add a lot of replayability as well, so that not every trophy would look the same. That's kind of the way it is in the Hunter Classic, in fact, where you can get some typical deer that have a couple drop tines, and in Classic it actually detracts from the score. So I'm curious if that would be the case in Call of the Wild, or if it would add to the score kind of like they do in real life. This video is very much meant to be kind of like just a session of tossing ideas out there, and also seeing what you guys think about these ideas and what you would like to see with the non-typical system whenever they decide to implement it. I feel like at this point they've got to add non-typicals soon if they want to kind of bring back some of the people that went over to Way of the Hunter, because as most people are probably well aware of, Way of the Hunter has been a relatively popular hunting game, and a lot of the people that used to play the Hunter Classic and the Hunter Call of the Wild have moved over to Way of the Hunter. Well, there's also quite a few people that have stayed with Call of the Wild because it was a lot more in line with what they enjoy, and Way of the Hunter was a bit too realistic, and not everybody enjoys that playstyle. But the problem with Call of the Wild at the moment is it's been so long since we have had a big update, and a lot of people are really just looking for some new content in order to get back into the game, and I feel like non-typicals would be a crazy way to bring everybody back to the game, and also to kind of bring some excitement back to the community. As of now, we've had one of the longest dead periods in a while, with really no talk of new updates, except for a couple hints here and there from Jaxiebeard during the live streams where he said that something big is coming, but hasn't really gone into detail on what that is, and really curious if it's going to be something like non-typicals, and that's what sparked me to make this video and kind of talk about it and get some of your guys' opinions on what you would like to see if they do implement the non-typical system. There also is a very good chance it could be something like a lodge or maybe a weapon pack, but if they really want to surprise everybody and come back with a bang, I feel like non-typicals would be the ideal way to do that. And also, that now that we're looking at all these level 5s, we have kind of hit a bit of a standstill when it comes to the reindeer grind. We still only have 4 level 5s stacked on the map and have not been able to stack any more, so I've kind of just been sitting on these 4 level 5s for a few hundred kills now and have not been able to get anything else to really change. We're still getting most of the respawns to be 4s and big 3s, so I'm wondering if we should add some more lakes to our grind before we continue on. I feel like adding a couple of these in would definitely be beneficial to get some more low-level 3s, or low-scoring level 3s on the map, to hopefully drive up the odds of getting some diamonds. And the last thing that I'd like to talk about is, what type of species do you guys think they would actually add non-typicals to if they end up bringing them to Call of the Wild? In the Hunter Classic, they only did it for the mule deer, the black-tail deer, and the white-tail deer. So my question is, would we get it on things like the Roosevelt elk in the Hunter Call of the Wild? I think that would be incredible if they did do it for Roosevelt elk, as well as Rocky elk, Sika deer, red deer, because there is such thing as non-typical red deer, though they don't look a ton different from the typical ones, and if we're being honest, a lot of the red deer in Call of the Wild already have kind of like that non-typical look. So I'm not sure what they could do there with the red deer, but they could definitely add non-typical elk and Sika deer and have them be pretty amazing. And even non-typical moose would be pretty incredible, and I know a lot of people have wanted a Great One moose, and Well, a non-typical moose would be pretty insane as well, so I'm curious what you guys would think about that. I do think it could be really cool, and I think a lot of those species I just mentioned would be a million times better if you had the opportunity to take down a non-typical one as well. But that's really going to be it for this video. I just wanted to get your guys' opinions on what you think about the possibility of non-typicals eventually coming to the game, and what you would like to see out of the system, if you agree with some of the stuff I said, or if maybe you would change one or two things that I mentioned to better fit what you would want to see with the non-typical system. With that being said, thank you all for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, click that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you guys will never miss any of the future uploads. Also, be sure to leave a comment down below like I just mentioned. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace!